Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. I've got an incredible guest that I'm excited to learn from today. I always get excited when I've got a guest on the podcast that I can really extract a lot of information from and be the guest myself and actually get to be the student today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I met this man down at a business conference about a month ago now. Tom Cronin is a renowned speaker and corporate meditation and mindfulness trainer, recognized nationally and internationally for his classes and programs as a leadership expert, often known as the King of Calm. I love that, by the way, Tom. Tom is recognized for his inspiring, empowering, and humorous presentations on leadership, stress management, mindfulness, and empowerment. He has spent 26 years as a broker trading swaps and bonds on the international finance market, and also spent 25 years studying Eastern philosophy, spirituality, meditation, and mindfulness. So he has a unique capacity to blend the two worlds in his inspiring and moving presentations. Tom Cronin's strong skills as an experienced meditation and mindfulness facilitator, teaches conference participants and corporate employees through his programs and classes, very practical and tips and strategies to apply to their work and home life, empowering insights and knowledge, and a meditation and training experience during his sessions that leave the audience feeling inspired and equipped to acquire the necessary skills to be happy, healthy, and successful in the corporate workplace. Tom has got an incredible resume of achievements. I look forward to diving into his story today. Tom, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
It's great to be here. We don't really need to say much more. We just covered it all then, haven't we?
That's it. See you later. Thank you for joining, guys, and share it with your friends. Tom, I would love to. We were drawn to each other at a conference down at the Entourage. So shout out to Jack DeLosa. You're actually his meditation teacher, which is really cool. His meditation coach, which is really awesome. So for anyone that doesn't know, Jack is an incredible business sort of mastermind coach that teach you how to build your business. So bumped into Tom down there about a month ago. It was about a month.
Yeah.
And had a good connection with you. Got to hear a little bit about who you are, and obviously people you attract people into your life for reasons, seasons, and lifetimes. So Tom, I'd love to hear, I guess, a little bit about your story. Obviously gave a bit of a idea of your resume and who you are and what you've done, but I'd love to hear, I guess, from the horse's mouth, your own story. I guess, how have you become who you are today, helping the people the way that you help them?
Yeah, it started out kind of, I guess the color of the story, the interesting part of it was when I had just arrived back from backpacking around the world after a gap year after school. Took a year off from going to university and blew all of my money traveling. So I needed to quickly fill up my bank account before I went to university. So I applied for a bunch of jobs, really with no interest in pursuing any career, but I was going to do a degree in journalism at Macquarie and write articles for Capitalistic Greed after backpacking around the world, listening to Susie and the Banshees and the Smiths and reading French existentialism. And I managed to land a job, ironically, on a trading room floor right smack bang in 1987, which was a really interesting year. It was the year that Jordan Belfort started his career as the Wolf of Wall Street.
Really?
Yeah. And it was actually the same year that Gordon Gekko and Bud Fox from Wall Street, that film came out. And it was the year that Sherman McCoy from Bonfire of the Vanities, who was a bomb broker extraordinaire, master of the universe in his mind, was given his birth through that book and film, Bonfire of the Vanities. Some people might not remember that. But, it was kind of like the Wild West. And before long, I was thrust into the world of finance markets and trading room floors and all the culture that went with that. And, it was really interesting when I saw Wolf of Wall Street, the film, I kind of got goosebumps because I couldn't believe how well they portrayed what a trading. It was very, very accurate. Yeah, there was things that we saw that probably weren't even going to make that film. It was pretty crazy times. But, it's fun. It's exciting. I was given a corporate Amex card, a sports car. I was given a six-figure salary, and before long, you're deep in that world without realizing how quickly you've morphed into it. And that was all well and good. But, before long, after a little while, these symptoms started to show up my body. I started getting a lot of anxiety and panic attacks and depression. I didn't know what all that was. You don't think, oh, I've got anxiety, I've got panic attacks. You just have this deterioration of well-being because, you're up, all hours of the night drinking and drugs and partying, and then all day long you're on a massive trading room floor screaming and shouting. So it's pretty hectic on your nervous system.
Yeah.
And this fight-flight response that you're in for a long time, it can really start to show up these symptoms. And that's when it started to exacerbate in a pretty bad way until I was sort of in my late 20s, and it blew up into like a full-blown nervous breakdown. And that was really the turning point. That's when we call this, and we can get to it later on, but the premise of the film, the Rashi, which is a crisis point in our life where the current trajectory that we're on is unsustainable as we become choiceless. And a Rashi is part of an evolutionary process that it says, you just don't get it. I've been trying to teach you a lesson for a long time. You're not listening. And so now I'm going to give you a choiceless situation here, break down or break through. And at that point, that's when I came across meditation. And that was a game changer for me. And look, just wanted to make sure people understand there's so many different types of meditation, but the one that I found, and I did a lot of research into, was the one that Jack Delosa is doing as well. The one that Ray Dalio, the world's largest hedge fund manager, Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, it's deep, it's effective, and it's simple. I think those three components of it were what I found really appealing. And so I found very significant.
Those three things, I would.
Yeah, it's deep, effective, and simple.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So you get a very deep minute, I was just teaching on the weekend. People generally get what's called transcendence. That's to go beyond your physical, mental, and emotional state whilst still being awake. So we do that when we go into sleep. We go beyond physical, mental, and emotional existence. We don't know that we're having feelings, or we're not having thoughts. We don't even know of our physical existence. But this place, we do it when we're awake, when we're conscious, and it's quite profound, and really it's the foundation of all reality.
And
so
what's the name? Is it Transcendental Meditation? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, look, it comes under a few different banners. It's using mantras to transcend, to go beyond. And so Vedic meditation, Transcendental Meditation, Primordial Sound Technique, The Art of Living, they all use that similar modality of repetition of a sound, a primordial vibration that will take the mind into deeper states of consciousness, beyond thinking.
I've got so many questions. Keep talking though, because I want to. There's going to be a good podcast.
Well, I'll cut the story short. So, basically, what happened was it was a complete game changer. I found that all those anomalies, the red lights on the dashboard, went away because my body started to regulate and normalize and optimize through the deep rest that I was getting in that meditation. And then I went on into the trading room floor again for another 16 years. And eventually left that career, the height of my career as one of the leading brokers in Australia, to teach meditation. So that's what I've been doing, teaching meditation and coaching and speaking for the last sort of few years now.
That's awesome. That's crazy that the movie you're saying is so relevant to it, because I watched that shit when I was like, when did it come out? I was probably 20, 21 years old. I'm like, holy shit, this is life, right? This is the hustle bustle. But it's I've been on quite a spiritual journey, which is why I'm so excited to have you on this podcast today, and just being able to, I guess, detach from those kind of egocentric style of living and being able to be fulfilled by being who you are, being able to be more calm and present rather than hustle, cards, money, sex, drugs, all that stuff. So the fact that you've literally gone from quite the extreme of the extreme to now to the other side is pretty awesome. So you've probably got an awesome insight into it all. I guess I would love to know, I like to start big picture, then I guess chunk things down for the everyday person. What is the purpose of meditation? Because it's something I have struggled with a lot in the past. I think I've got a good relationship with meditation now, but what is the purpose of it? Why would someone who's listening to this right now, why would someone start to do it? What's the purpose of it? What would they want to be getting out of it?
It's going to be twofold, really. One will be carrot, one will be stick. One will be on a physiological level, one will be on a spiritual level. So the carrot is I want to go deeper. I want to explore more of life. I want to feel called to enlightenment. I want to have a deeper spiritual experience. I'm feeling that there's something subtle, something deeper, something more rich in my existence of life that is beyond my Bitcoin portfolio, beyond my car, beyond my partner, beyond my house. There's something in the subtle world that I've yet to really connect with, that I can feel is there, that I want to explore. Then there's the carrot, which is then there's the stick, which is what drove me, which is my life sucks and I need to make changes. Where I'm at right now isn't really delivering the fulfillment that I've been looking for. And what drives that sort of state, which is where most of the world's at, and why I was inspired to, do what I do and make the film and everything, is because most of the world's problems comes from this notion that fulfillment comes from acquisition or action. from what we call outcome-oriented fulfillment. That if I acquire something or if I experience something like my team winning or getting a new dress or a new outfit, then I will find greater levels of fulfillment. But what that does is that it leads to so many problems, and most of the world's problems come from that underlying tenet that outcome-oriented fulfillment is the source of fulfillment. But when we transcend in meditation, two things happen. When we go into these deeper states, this is why, as good as they are, visualization, gratitude, all those chakra clearings, they're all really good. But until we get into that deep transcendent state, firstly, the physiological level of rest is 4 times deeper than sleep. And that's what really allowed that healing process in my body to get out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system and start that healing.
Can you explain the two, sympathetic, parasympathetic, just for people listening?
Yeah, sure. So sympathetic nervous system, think of sympathetic for stress response. And that's when it's a beautiful mechanism in the body that's designed to preserve life, to protect us from danger. So if we're facing a marauding tribe or a saber-toothed tiger, then physiologically our whole body changes. Red and white blood cell count changes, blood starts to coagulate, our mouth dries up because we're not producing digestive juices because we're not going to eat right now. We're conserving fuel, we're producing lots more sugar into our bloodstream to be more aggressive. Our cortisol and adrenaline's being pumped into our blood. Melatonin's being pulled out of the bloodstream. Serotonin and oxytocin, the biochemicals for happiness and love, are pulled out of the bloodstream. This is not a time for compassion, happiness, and sleep. That's dangerous if you have those things in your blood. So I'm going to protect you. Don't worry, dude, I've got you. That's the sympathetic nervous system, and that's where a lot of the world lives right now. Then the parasympathetic nervous system is when we go back to the cave and we're like, whew, that was intense. Now it's time to unwind. It's time to eat yummy food. It's time to make love. It's time to play with the kids. It's time to do some rock art on the walls. And it's the time when we see the regulation of the body back to its optimal state. And the problem is with our world, the state of frenetic living that we're in, we're not getting ourselves into that parasympathetic, even when we're falling asleep enough these days. And so meditation, particularly the transcending styles, are so powerful at activating that parasympathetic nervous system. And I was teaching a large organization of traders the other day at a large Dutch trading company. And, you know, it was quite interesting. It was an early session of the day and they were sitting around in the big foyer of their breakout area. And, you know, half of them, within 5 minutes, their head was nodding down and they were going into a deep relaxation because I was activating very quickly their parasympathetic nervous system. So it's a very efficient way of changing the body.
How come so many people, that blew my mind what you just said then, how like even when we're going to sleep, they're still in that state of, I guess, stress and survival. How come, I guess, why does the average person get to that level? Like that's not healthy from, I guess, my naive knowledge. That can't be healthy. That's literally going to break down your immune system, break down your body, break down so many areas of your body. So how come as a world, so many people get to that stage where even sleeping can't switch it off?
Yeah, it's happening very quickly, but without us realizing. And it's kind of like the analogy of when the French cook frogs. They put the frog in the cold water, and the frog's a chameleon. It adapts to its environment, and it's slowly adapting without even realizing that it's adapting. And before long, it's so hot, it just dies. And it's kind of like what's happening to our society. Just in the last 20 years, we're seeing a reckoning happening, a rapid sort of quickening of life happening. We're on our phones more, we're on our phones later, we're absorbing more information. Our mental stimulation is off the charts like we've never seen in 10,000 years of our history or 50,000 years of our history. So it's really a culmination and an acceleration, an exponential rate of, speeding up of life and huge acceleration of absorption of technology and information flow in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years maximum. Crazy. And our nervous system's just completely overwhelmed with it. We don't realize it. And what we're doing, unfortunately, is that we're in an incredible epidemic of distraction and suppression. So that's through caffeine, sugar, social media, alcohol, and pharmaceutical drugs and recreational drugs, where we're in a state that we really are just unable to cope. But if I can just distract myself from this dilemma with any of those things that I've just listed, then hopefully I can get through this.
Just a question lead into a next question, because the next one will be like, how does one meditate? What can we do right now? What are tips and tricks that people can start to do to start to reduce stress, start to switch off more, start to be more present, start to, I guess, let the body regenerate and be healthy and happy, which isn't necessary meditation. And then we'll get into meditation. So what can people do kind of day to day, whether you just mentioned caffeine, phones, technology, what are like some simple tricks that people can do outside of meditation? And then we'll dive into the actual meditation itself.
This is not going to be what people want to hear.
Right.
Because the people want strategies like that. Let's cut out sugar. Let's cut out caffeine. They're there for a reason, because we're stressed. Now, Dr. Bruce Lipton from Stanford University Medical School says that 95% of all sickness is a result of stress. So rather than trying to treat the sickness, rather than trying to treat the addiction to coffee or the addiction to sugar or the addiction to alcohol, rather than trying to reduce all of those, if we remove the stress from the body, there's a natural shift in our actions. So 99% of the world's, I'd say 99.999% of the world's population right now, their actions are driven by the quest to find fulfillment. So it's coming from lack, going to the need to be fulfilled. But when we establish an inner fulfillment through the meditation practice, then what happens is movement and action from fulfillment rather than for fulfillment is very, very different action. When we move towards action from fulfillment, we're moving from a very different place of inspiration. And we feel that we move into directions that are congruent and aligned with our inner state. So if our inner state says, I'm feeling really healthy, I'm feeling really vibrant, I'm feeling really fulfilled, I feel like at this moment, because of that, doing something like going for a sauna or going for an ice bath, going to the yoga, going to the gym, eating a salad, or having a green smoothie, or hanging out with my family, giving more to the world, as opposed to I'm feeling really deeply stressed, I'm feeling really deeply lacking, but you're telling me now to give up my coffee, my sugar, my alcohol? Like, what have I got left? I got nothing left. So I could give you lots of strategies to try and make life healthier, but I always come back to the one premise, is that unless we address the underlying cause, which is your stress, then it's kind of like this pushing shit uphill.
Okay, well, let's dive into how do you solve stress?
Yeah, well, there's a number of different things we can do, definitely, to reduce stress. What I've found to be the most effective and most efficient and the most easily accessible use of your time is simply to meditate. It's quite phenomenal. Like I said, there's a training room floor of young guys, and within 5 minutes, I'd put them into the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, I could have talked to them about different things to do, but it wouldn't have really changed their sympathetic nervous system state. Even going to the gym, I see people down at boot camp in Bondi, and I go to the gym 3 times a week. It's very important we do exercise. But where is that exercise coming from? If you've had a bender all night with 3 lines of cocaine and a gut load of vodka, and then you go to boot camp the next morning and he's yelling at you, no pain, no gain, I want 120%, you're compounding stress on stress. You actually don't come out of the stress response. You're still in sympathetic nervous system from the night before and from the next day, and then you go into work in a meeting and you've got some deadlines. It's just a mess that's going to go blow up eventually, and that's where we're getting to.
So meditation is, say, I guess, can you walk us through, I guess, the style that you recommend? And like you said, there's so many styles. It's honestly something I get confused with a little bit as well. Like there's guided meditations. There's ones where that it's not, you just listen to sort of frequencies or you listen to nothing. There's ones where you can go in with, I guess, like prompting questions. And sometimes I get confused on, I guess, what is, I guess, most beneficial or what would be simple, deep, effective, and simple. What can people start to do to start to meditate, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? What are your, I guess, recommendations for people to start to get into the meditative world?
Yeah, the thing with the way we live our life is that we like to do things that we really enjoy. And that's, we've created a very charming life. It's the most charming life we've ever created. We have Uber Eats and we have Netflix and we have Spotify and, we have Westfields Mall. So doing something that we don't want to do or doing something that's not enjoyable, it just doesn't happen. We tend to put that right down the list because we've got a lot of things that are competing for our time right now. They're going to most likely add a lot of value or pleasure. And so if I'd say to someone, just do something for 5 minutes, like trying to empty your mind, just start with that. Firstly, what's going to happen is they're not going to get very tangible results and it's not going to be very enjoyable. And so if I give them a really simple entry point to the meditation experience that doesn't give them quantifiable, tangible, measurable results, they simply won't keep doing it. It has to have tangible, measurable, quantifiable results. And that's why people like Jack say, you've got to do this meditation technique, because it's so definitive. It was an absolute game changer. And you can come out of 20 minutes going, holy moly, like I feel so different. Like that level of bliss, the serotonin, the melatonin, the oxytocin that trickles into your bloodstream is very quantifiable. You can distinctly notice a difference than before you went into that meditation experience. And that's why a lot of people of these practices, this particular style, sustain it for long periods of time. Whereas a lot of the other styles, people kind of dither and dather around the edges, doing it because they think they should do it. And I don't want to kind of be banging a drum here, but what I want is for people to have something that really makes a difference in their life and get their life to the rock solid optimal state that they can live in. And that's why Oprah Winfrey says it's only from that place can you create your best work and your best life. What she's talking about is that state of presence, that state of awareness, the state of deep calm that comes from accessing those deep meditation states. So what I recommend is just to find a qualified teacher and look around, find a teacher. Some people will want to learn with me. Some people won't want to learn with me. Some people might want a female teacher. Some people might want a different modality of meditation. So look around for techniques that you can get a definitive experience out of, something that you can quantify as making an impact, and then do an actual training course. Don't just try and wing it. I've been trying to do it for like 3 years and I just can't seem to get there. But do a proper course, proper training with a qualified teacher. And I think that's the best way to go all in on it.
What is your most common, I guess, objection for like, it doesn't work for me, I can't figure it out, it doesn't work, I've tried it, I've given it up, I tried this teacher, I tried this course, I tried this app. What are, I guess, some of the most common, I guess, objections you get to people even starting the work or doing the work and not getting the quantifiable results that they're after, like you're saying? What are some of those common, I guess, objections you get? Because then I would love to know how we can crush those objections on this podcast right now.
Yeah, there's two main objections. One is that I can't seem to get there. So that they have an idea that they should be in the meditation, they should be getting an experience. And most people think that they should have no thoughts in meditation. And one thing they'll learn in the course of Vedic meditation is that having thoughts in meditation simply indicates that you could be meditating really well. And that's because of the stress releasing that can happen in meditation. So firstly, let go of the idea that you should have a meditation experience where there's no thoughts. It's not about what's happening in the meditation. Some meditations are busy, some are uncomfortable, some you get sexual arousal, sometimes you get angry, sometimes you get sad, sometimes you get frustrated. All of that's this energy that's moving as the body goes into that parasympathetic nervous system. And getting trained in that really helps you have a deeper appreciation and acceptance of the experience in meditation. But what's more important is letting go of what's happening in meditation and just start noticing what's happening outside of your meditation. How do you feel after your meditation? How do you feel after 2 weeks of meditating, 3 weeks of meditating twice a day? A lot of people get very outcome oriented, obsessed about their meditation experience rather than life itself. Yeah. And that's what we just want to look at, the overall benefits. Then the next thing that really people struggle with is time. And that's simply just a value system that needs to be addressed. We have a very different set of values at the moment. A lot of that is just short-term pleasure. And we'll usually chase the shortest path to fulfillment, which is natural, but more often than not, that comes with consequences. So, people like yourself that have a very disciplined type of life, you're willing to put aside certain time in your day, and it might be for breath work, it might be for ice baths, it might be for exercise, it might be for yoga, it might be for meditation, it might be for all of those things, for drinking water, because you know that if you commit to those particular disciplines, the macro perspective of your life is just substantially better. And what we have is a lot of people foregoing those particular disciplines or strategies or processes because they're just simply going for the shortest route to fulfillment, which is if I can get the candy, the donut, the beer, the Coca-Cola, the burger, then that will satisfy my immediate pleasure, but not realizing, usually because of just lack of awareness, that it's just going to compound the problem that they're already in.
I've got two very selfish questions, because these are the questions I generally want some answers to. Is what is happening in the mind when you meditate? And before you answer that, I'd like to let you know what I think is happening based on what I've learned. Is I'm a big subscriber of John Demartini. I mention him quite frequently on my podcast, and he mentions a lot. Your body and mind is homeostatic. It's always seeking balance. It's always seeking to be balanced and healthy and neutral. And a lot of the times, if you've got unbalanced perceptions in your mind, like you went through an abuse or an assault or something that was wrong, is when you're meditating, it gives yourself the space for that balance to occur. That's why things will show up, things will pop up. So when I picture it, I use a pendulum. I'm picturing the pendulum swinging back to balance as you meditate, because you're giving your mind the environment without all the stimulus outside, the phones, the food, the partying, the drugs, or whatever. So you're giving your mind, I guess, the prime environment to do the healing and balancing work. That's how I kind of see it for now. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I just said and what's your view on what is happening in people's mind as they are meditating.
Yeah, such a good question. I love Demartini. He's so insightful and he's added a lot of value to my life, I must admit. Exactly that. There's a cohesiveness, a coherence that happens in the mind and body when we go into the meditation. So if we just look at what happens in meditation first, which is that we've gotten out of the thinking mind. So the thinking mind is either left or right hemisphere, or frontal lobe or rear lobe. And so there's a particular quality or attribute to the nature of those thoughts. Now, if we're no longer thinking mind, but in conscious mind, which means there's no thoughts, but there's just awareness, what happens is we see this here. You can just do brain EEG meditation and hit images on Google, and you'll see lots of images of brains becoming completely cohesive and unified. And that actually translates through to the body as well. And that's why for me, prior to meditating, I was suffering from anxiety, depression, panic attacks, insomnia, agoraphobia. After meditation, all of those anomalies simply melted away. And that's because me being in the long-term sympathetic nervous system state was causing a major disturbance in my body. And what happens is Dr. Deepak Chopra, who's a great physician, he says that the symptom that shows up in the body is the fifth and final stage of an imbalance that's actually been in the system for quite some time. And then we get the symptom. Of course, Western medicine's trying to treat the symptom by putting a tablet in our throat. But if we can get to the very underlying cause of that symptom, which is allowing the body and its natural healing intelligence. Now, if I cut my arm accidentally on a rose bush and I put a bandage on that arm, the bandage has nothing to do with the healing. The body knows exactly what to do. The bandage just stops the blood going on my shirt and maybe stopping infection going inside the wound. But the body knows to coagulate the blood. It knows to change the red or white blood cell count. It knows to create some scab cells. It knows to develop some skin cells. It has an intelligence at a cellular level, how to optimize and progress. And so what happens when we meditate is that the cause of the distortion and all of our desires and self-doubts and limiting beliefs and negativity, when we get out of the way, the cohesiveness of the brain, the nervous system, and the body starts to unify and starts to up level. And it's quite remarkable how we can actually not only reverse our rage, we can extend our telomeres, we can optimize our physiology, we can regulate our nervous system, we can regulate our biochemicals, and also we can expand our mind and change the way we think.
Powerful stuff. What was the name? If you can repeat that name, you said the symptom is the fifth and final step. Who was that person?
Dr. Deepak Chopra. I would highly recommend everyone follow him. He's got some amazing books. The Spiritual Laws of Success is a great one. Quantum Healing is another great one. Perfect Health is another great one. He's got about 70 books.
Epic.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Talking about books, a book that just came to mind as you mentioned, something you just mentioned there, Joe Dispenza came to mind. I've done Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself and Becoming Supernatural.
Yeah.
And just manifestation, I guess that's the topic I want to get into, is like, because there's the what is the secret and the law of attraction, where you cross your fingers and hope a Ferrari pops up in your driveway versus like actually becoming that frequency of, I guess this is the way I explain it anyway, so I love your take on it, is it's like you are here right now in the present moment listening to this podcast, and then there's the life that you want in the future, and who is that person you need to be energetically to have those things that you want. And if you be that person now, energetically speaking, you'll start to attract those things. That's my take on manifestation, which I've really adopted from Joe Dispenza. I guess I'd love to know your take on manifestation through the use of meditation and other practices as well.
Yeah, big fan of Joe's. He's a phenomenal man doing great things in the world, and very much aligned with what he's saying and what you're saying here, is that when we meditate, what happens is we're changing our vibrational state. So if we're stressed, if we're overwhelmed, if we're tired, we're depressed, then that's like a Wi-Fi modem. Our body is like a Wi-Fi modem that's sending out a frequency, and that frequency starts to reciprocate in the laws of attraction, a material world back into our field, our vortex. And so we start to attract in things that are congruent and aligned with us in our particular vibration. So if I'm in a pretty lousy vibration, I'm going to naturally attract and align with other people that are in lousy vibrations, other situations that are in lousy, and then I'll just keep saying, see, I told you, this just happens to me all the time. And so we're in this vicious cycle. And what meditation does is it breaks that pattern, it breaks that code. Now, one thing that's really important for a lot of people to understand, that we can change our vibration very quickly. But
how do you do?
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, meditation and visualizations and things like that, saunas, sweat baths, ice baths, the food that we eat, all those things can change our state. And this is the important thing. Most of the world think if I get something, then that will change my state and things will work out for me. Yeah. But it doesn't work that way, because it's your state that's determining what you get. And so if we change our state, will it change what we get? And so
everyone, go back 30 seconds and play that again.
Yeah.
Please. Anyways, continue, sir.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is put the horse before the cart. So changing the state first, then we change what we start to attract in. And when you change your state into a higher level, and this is the one thing I work with my coaching clients, is that we can't do anything as far as you becoming a global thought leader and global impact if your vibration is in a low frequency. We've got to get your frequency into a high state. And we've got that capacity to do that within days, weeks, even minutes. But then from there, start to get clear and be patient with the physical world. It's very slow to move. That world could take days, weeks, months, years. Now, I can manifest a car park pretty quickly, which annoys the shit out of my mates who don't meditate. It's like, dude, why you always get that car park right out the front of the restaurant every time we have dinner? It's like, but other things like, that $2 million farm that you want in Byron Bay, it could take 10 years. These things can take time. So we've got to be less in that hungry, lacking, needy state. Why can't I manifest this now? But just be really surrender and let go and allow the process to unfold in its due course.
I've got like 5 questions. I'm just trying to shoot the best ones at you for the audience.
Just checking my phone, because my phone charger is my computer. Are you going to be able to cut this? Because I need to just plug my phone in, because the charger on my phone is hot spotting off my computer, and I'm worried that it's going to drop out in a minute.
Let me pause it, guys. We'll see you in 2 seconds. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Quick pause break to whack the phone on charge. The question I've got about 3 or 4, but I want to see which one would probably make the most amount of sense. Something that just came to mind, and I like to share vulnerability on my podcast, is when I first, started going down the self-help journey, my self-growth healing journey, I was that really judgmental, anti woo-woo, airy-fairy, spiritual, energetic world. And when I started to get into it, it took me a while to get into it. And I would like to know from you, from someone who's come from such a the history you had, where you started on the stockroom floor, making sales, drugs, parties, doing what it. Just watch The Wolf of Wall Street if anyone that hasn't watched it. How did you start to what started you, because you were having those symptoms showing up, the rashi that you were referring to? Why were you open to going into the spiritual realm? What made you at least be open to it? Because there's a lot of, I used to be this person who was like, you just said, manifestation, energetic, changing your vibration. That's bullshit. Crystals, blah, blah, blah. And they're just really anti to that. So from someone who's come from quite the extreme opposite, why were you open to it? Just so maybe people that are maybe in that realm a little bit can start to open their views of the world a bit more.
I think it's really important to understand. I didn't, and most people don't, open themselves up to becoming spiritual or woo-woo or into enlightenment. I had no interest in any of that. I didn't even know about it. All that happened was I was in a really bad way. I was kind of suicidal tendencies, coming off addictions, still on addictions, put on pharmaceutical drugs, seeing psychiatrists, seeing doctors, suffering from mental health leave with agoraphobia. And I was watching a documentary on TV about a property developer. This was 1996, so there's no Netflix and there's no internet. And it was a free-to-air documentary about a property developer. His name was Bruno Grollo, very successful man in the 80s and 90s, built most of the high-rise buildings in Sydney and Melbourne. And he was just simply talking about his success. And 2-minute segment of that story showed him in a business suit, sitting in a chair, meditating, and he used the word Transcendental Meditation. I never heard of it before. But at that time, I really loved the rave culture. It was 1980s, 1990s, and the rave culture was really big. I was really into the whole drug scene and the party scene and getting out of it. This whole idea of just getting wasted and getting out of it.
Yeah.
And this idea of transcending it, I don't know what it was, as maybe it's just still part of my addiction thing, but I really like this idea of going into this other dimension. You see a lot of the raves, with the third eye things and all that sort of stuff. And so I really kind of felt this drawn to that. And then I pulled out, some of you young people listening will have no idea what I'm talking about, but I pulled out the Yellow Pages, which is our old version of Google. Yeah. And started looking up meditation because he just talked about how it helped him be successful. And I could just see this peacefulness about him that I was lacking in my life. And that was the starting point for me and when I went to the intro talk, it was just science. It just simply made scientific sense that he talked about the sympathetic, he talked about biochemistry, he talked about outcome-oriented fulfillment versus self-referred fulfillment. And that everything was just like an epiphany for me. It was like a light bulb moment that's what I had to have in my life.
Powerful. I guess the reason I'm sharing that is for anyone that is listening, that it's like you probably haven't made it to the end of this podcast if you are like that. But if just for people to, I guess, open their mind a little bit more, because I remember I was just so against it. I was like, it just really, I guess, cost me so much growth internally. Also focus on the accumulation, the achievement, the money, the sales, the business versus really investing into me. So I just wanted to hear someone else's story who's come from quite the extreme to where you are now. I don't know if this is your realm of touching on this topic, so I'll ask you anyways. I think you mentioned ego as you were speaking. I asked this question to someone and they couldn't really answer it, or they did answer it actually, but I would love to hear your take on it. How do you differentiate between, I guess, your ego self versus that authentic self and your real self? And if meditation plays a part within that, because it's something that it's still a battle that I'm having, where it's like I'm setting goals. I'm like, is that really a fulfillment goal? I think you're using your source of fulfillment. You're using that phrase before. And is that out of ego or is that out of inspiration? So I'd love to know if any takes on that, if that's something that you dive into.
It can be a complex realm, and there's going to be different interpretations of this. So I'll say it purely from a subjective viewpoint, from my viewpoint, and anyone, I'm open to having discussions or even arguments if people want to argue. I won't argue with them because it's just purely individual viewpoints. Yep. The way I see ego is your thinking mind and feeling body, and you can even go as far as your physical apparatus. And so we have these three layers of form and phenomenon that we experience as our individual selves. This is clearly Tom's body. This is clearly Tom's thoughts. And these are clearly Tom's feelings. Those three layers, and they ascend in levels of density. So the most dense is your physical. The next least dense is your emotional, which is felt through the body. And then the next least dense is your mental. But they're very individual, and they're very basically separate, and they're very much mine. Now, when I transcend those three in a deep meditation, what happens is I experience what's called capital S self, or the unboundedness, the unmanifest, the formless, the permanent, the eternal. One would call it God, divine, or source. And what it is, it's like the wave now losing its individualized wave identity, which is clearly separate from all the other waves, and now experiencing itself as an oceanic being. And so there's the individual, which is the ego, which is the physical, mental, and emotional body. So anything that's coming from that is egoic, not in a good or bad way, it just is. It's just egoic. So that's your ego. And it clearly determines that that's you, separate from other things. And then there's the non-egoic, which is we call non-duality. So in duality, which is subject and object, the place where my attention's going, future, past, or present. So any desires is egoic. And then we've got the non-egoic, which is in that state of what's just called presence or being, which is a very subtle realm.
I'm trying to process all of that. That was a lot. So how does one use that? So say for myself, I'm trying to set some goals. I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, you know what, you're right. I want to start to move my life the right direction. I'm trying to set goals based on my true self, authentic self, my non-egoic self. How does one, I guess, differentiate that? I don't know if that was the right question. I don't know if I worded that right.
The non-egoic self doesn't set goals. It's nothing wrong with setting goals. What happens is that what's a really important part of being a human is to have the full human experience. And the full human experience is to not just have physical, mental, and emotional experiences, but to have that unbounded experience as well. We call it Turiya in Sanskrit, Turiya, which means the fourth. So this is the fourth layer of reality. Whereas the wave now experiences this unbounded field of just presence. So in that state of presence or being, there's nothing you can get that's going to make you feel better, because you are actually at the subtle level all of it. You are the omnipresent. You are the omnipotent and the omniscient. So you are all knowledge. You are. And then we're getting a bit deep here. We're getting a bit vast.
I like it. I like
okay,
it
cool. You're happy to go there? Cool.
Yeah, keep
because
going.
Some people will just be like, what the frick is he talking about? It's just bullets. But it's a very subtle field where there's no forms or phenomenon. And so therefore you can't manifest a form to make this form feel better, because you aren't a form at that point. You're experiencing yourself as the field. And it's very subtle, but what happens is you just get this strong sense of just being present, and there's nothing in time and space or form or matter that can actually contribute or add any more value than what you're already experiencing. Not as an individual though, as divinity itself, or as God, or as source, or as oneness. And so it's not like the ocean saying, if only I could have another wave and I'd be more fulfilled.
That's a good analogy.
Like, you are all waves. So you're experiencing it as an experience. And this is what's beautiful about the meditation experience, is that it gives you direct experience beyond an intellectual concept.
That was a great answer. I'm happy I threw that over to you. Another one that I haven't been able to ask any of my guests, but I thought of it as you were talking. Can you explain to me and to our listeners the difference between, I don't even know the terms of them and how to explain them properly, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and I've heard terms of the superconscious mind. And I don't even know if that is a thing or if that's just some self-development gurus thrown out there. Is there truth in what I just said? Can you explain those three differences if they are there?
Yeah, I think that's really well described. I would call the superconscious mind, another word for it would be pure conscious mind.
Yeah.
So what we have is the conscious mind, which is your thinking mind. Now, your thinking mind, there's a Sanskrit word called vasanas, vasanas. A vasana is a tendency of your mind. So we have these habituated thought forms that get very deep grooves in our sort of neurological landscape, which are patterns, and we think in a particular pattern. So 85% of the thoughts we have on a daily basis are repetitive thoughts of the day before and the day before and the day before. We kind of think very basically and very simply most days in and out, without a lot of range out of our current thinking state. And then 85% of those thoughts, they're not even our thoughts. So someone listening to this podcast aren't having their thoughts, they're listening to my thoughts. When they're reading an Instagram post, that's not their thoughts, that's someone else's thoughts. When they're listening to the news, that's someone else's thoughts, not their thoughts. So there's not a lot of free thinking space in our day. Most of the time, we're listening to someone else's thoughts or engaging in someone else's thoughts. And then when we do have this tiny slither of free thinking time, when we're on the bus or we're in bed at night, we're having these habituated thoughts. Oh my God, I hope I'm gonna have enough money next week. Or, oh, I can't believe, I did that when I was, last year or whatever. So we're regressing or forecasting into the future and the past. So that's thinking mind, and it's very conditioned. And we actually arrive in out of the womb with a preset conditioning or code in that brain, which is through our ancestry. So your sister will have a particular way of thinking, and you'll have a particular way of thinking, which might be slightly different. And that will be already coded into you before you even arrive in this field. Okay, because you get your hardware and your software from your genetics. Then you get this coding for the next 7 years of your life, which you don't get to choose either, which is which family you are raised into, which political system you're raised into, which religious system you're raised into. And if you grew up in a right-wing Mormon family in Ohio, you're going to have a very different viewpoint of the world than if you grew up in the mountains of Afghanistan under the Taliban. And whose fault is that? That's just no right or wrong. It's just that that's the conditioning and the environment that you're brought up in. And so we don't get to choose a lot of the nature of our thoughts, even when we come into this world. So we've got this very deeply coded software that we've got to try and find our way through life. And so that's the conscious mind. Then we've got the subconscious mind, which is this sort of a bit of that conditioning and coding that's sort of playing out, which we don't even realize. It's very hard for us to access it because it's just kind of this undercurrent of essence of our being. It's can be a deeply coded and deep level. I liken it to the waves being the conscious mind, the thinking mind, which are reactive. The current of the ocean underneath the waves being the subconscious mind, which is a movement of energy sort of thing, a movement of consciousness. And then we've got the pure conscious mind, which has no thoughts in it and no influence no impact. And what exists in that is all wisdom, all knowledge is embodied in that field. And that's what we've got to start incorporating more as a human into the pure conscious mind. And that's where the meditation, the transcendental meditation techniques play a really integral role to get us into the pure conscious mind or superconscious mind and free of the coded conditioned mind or even the subconscious mind.
And how does meditation do that? It's just disconnecting from that conscious. And like I hear the term, I guess, in the sort of spiritual world, as I have downloads, like I'll have a meditation trip or a psychedelic trip, and I had these downloads. Is that coming from the pure conscious mind? Is that what's happening?
Yeah. So all thought, all creativity comes from that field. So that field is a field of potential. It's just a birthing of potential. So the microphone you're speaking into, the black shirt that you're wearing, the chair that you're sitting on, the blinds on the window itself, the building, everything is a form that was cognized, intended, or desired from that field of infinite possibility. So there's nothing that's been manifested and expressed and created that hasn't come from the field of intention and desire. And so all of possibility is sitting latently in that field, and it's waiting to be birthed. And so what's really exciting for these people listening who are entrepreneurs is that if everything that's been manifest, like the iPhone, it always was in the field for infinite time. It was always potentially in the field. The mere fact alone that it's manifest says that it was possible. So the big question for entrepreneurs is what's in the field that hasn't been manifest yet, and that's infinite. So what can you extract out of infinite possibility and create and manifest that hasn't been created or manifest? And it just starts to boggle your mind. It's just like, well, there's every possibility. Every business model that's going to happen is in that field right now. Every device that's ever going to get created is in that field right now. Every major best-selling book is in that field right now. Every blockbuster film is in that field right now.
I think we're going to have to do a part two. This has been phenomenal. I've still got some more questions. I guess there's one more and then we'll wrap this up. Just so I am a practical guy. I like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3 type of person, but obviously I'm learning to lean into the unknown and let in the quantum field, choose what I want from the quantum field. Just for the everyday person listening right now, I mentioned the question earlier, how does one start to meditate? You said, look for a coach. Just say someone's not in a position financially to do that, or they just don't know where to start. If you were to coach me right now, I'm your student, I'm saying, Tom, can you show me how to meditate? What would you coach me or the listeners right now for me to start implementing meditation today? What would you coach me to do so I can start doing it today?
Yeah, if you can't go to a teacher, can't afford a teacher, can't find a teacher, and right now you need to calm your nervous system down and get through the afternoon, it's a really simple process that I give people. And first step is to de-excite our nervous system. One of the most exciting things and stimulants for our nervous system is what we see. So I get people to close their eyes. After we close our eyes, I get them to be aware of the breath moving through their body. And once they start to observe the breath moving in and out of their body, I get them to refine their attention even more specifically to the air moving through their nostrils. And once I get them to refine that to another level of intensity, to get them to be aware of the cool skin around the rim of the nostril as the air brushes the moisture right around that very rim of the nostril. And it's so subtle and so specific that when they zero their attention into that one single point and keep it there with some force and some discipline, what they'll find is when the mind stops moving around, the nervous system stops moving around, the physiology stops moving around, and we create a sense of centeredness and calm. And that can happen within just 3 or 5 minutes.
That's crazy. It's just, I guess, my basic understanding is you're controlling that focus to switch off from all that stimulus to go super detailed to the breathing, or just cutting off stimulus through the eyes to focusing on the breath, to then focusing on the nostrils, to focusing. So you're just literally narrowing that focus away from all that stimulus. Is that kind of a purpose of what's going on?
Yeah, all that's happening that's causing distortion in the world is quite simple, is we just have a mind that loves to think and loves information. And so with that, the mind is future, past, present, just constantly rampant. And we've lost mastery and sovereignty of our mind and body because of the nature of the mind's tendency to do that. And if we can just reclaim that from the mind, everything changes.
Powerful. Tom, this has been epic. This is possibly the deepest podcast that I've done in a very, very, very long time, if not as a whole. For anyone that wants to, I guess, connect with you, reach out for your service professionally, or just to connect with you from this podcast, where's the best place to find you or to look into more of your work?
TomCronin.com, my website. You can find everything that's going on there. And then if they ever want to reach out, Instagram is where I'm probably most active, at Tom Cronin, all one word.
Guys, thank you, Tom. Thank you for your time. This has been phenomenal, incredibly valuable for me. So I know this is going to be value for my listeners. And it's been a pleasure to connect with you. I know we connected for a reason, and it's been a pleasure to have you on today. And I look forward to connecting you for possibly part 2 in the future as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all good, mate. It's great to be here. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.